The cemetery gates slammed shut just as I reached them. The heavy iron lock clicked into place. I froze. For a second, I honestly thought it had to be some kind of mistake. My father was about to be buried. I had just driven 3 hours without stopping. My black dress was still wrinkled from the road trip. My hands were shaking, and I was holding a bouquet of white lilies Dad used to buy for Mom every anniversary. Then my younger brother Jason walked toward the gate. He didn't even look sad. He looked annoyed. He stopped a few feet away, slipped his hands into his coat pockets, and said, "You need to leave." I blinked. "Excuse me?" He sighed, like I was the one making things difficult. "Dad didn't want you here." My stomach dropped. "What the hell are you talking about?" Behind him, I could see the funeral already starting. The pastor opened his Bible. Family members stood around the casket. My aunts, my cousins, even neighbors I'd known for 30 years. Every single one of them looked at me. Not one person moved. Not one person unlocked the gate. Jason stepped closer. "Don't make a scene, Claire." A scene? I stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "You locked me out of my own father's funeral." He shrugged. "It was Mom's decision." That almost made me laugh. Mom had passed away 9 years ago. Nice try. So whose decision was it really? Jason's jaw tightened. "You were gone for years." "I moved 2 hours away. I didn't disappear." "You weren't here when Dad got sick." "I was here every weekend." "You weren't here enough." I felt my chest tighten. There it was. The same argument. The same guilt. The same lie he'd been feeding everyone for months. Rain started falling. Tiny drops at first. Then harder. Nobody moved. Nobody offered me an umbrella. Nobody even looked ashamed. I gripped the cold iron bars. "You know Dad would have never wanted this." Jason looked away. Just for a second. That was all I needed. He knew I was right. Then my sister-in-law leaned over and whispered something into his ear. His face hardened again. "Just go home, Claire." "No." He laughed. You really gonna stand out here all day? If that's what it takes." He rolled his eyes. "You're embarrassing yourself." I slowly looked down at my purse. Inside it was a worn brown envelope my father had handed me 6 months earlier. He'd made me promise never to open it unless something went terribly wrong. At the time, I'd laughed and called him dramatic. Now, I realized he knew this day was coming. I pulled out my phone. There was only one person left who still knew the truth. I tapped a number I hadn't called in months. The phone rang once. Twice. Then a calm voice answered. "Carter and Wells Law Office. This is Michael Carter speaking." I took a deep breath. "Mr. Carter?" "I think it's time." Michael Carter didn't ask any questions. He didn't waste time with, "How are you holding up?" He simply said, "Stay exactly where you are. I'm 10 minutes away." Then he hung up. I slipped my phone back into my purse and looked through the iron gate. The funeral had started. The pastor's voice echoed across the cemetery. Ashes to ashes. I couldn't hear the rest. My eyes were locked on my father's casket. I wasn't ready to say goodbye. Not like this. Jason glanced at me again. I could tell he was getting nervous. He walked back over. "Who did you call?" I gave him a small smile. "You'll find out." His face tightened. "Claire, seriously, don't do this." I raised an eyebrow. "Funny, that's exactly what Dad used to say, whenever you tried manipulating him."
His jaw clenched. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Yeah, keep telling yourself that." He scoffed and walked away. But he kept looking back. He wasn't worried about me. He was worried about whoever was driving to that cemetery. 6 months earlier, Dad had asked me to stop by his house after dinner. Nothing unusual. We used to do that every Friday. I'd bring takeout, he'd complain about my driving, then we'd argue over baseball like we had for 20 years. That night felt different. He looked tired, older, like he'd been carrying something alone for a long time. He disappeared into his office and came back holding a thick brown envelope. "Keep this." I laughed. "What is it?" "You'll know when you need it." "Dad, I'm serious." I rolled my eyes. "You're being dramatic again." He smiled. "I hope I am." Then his smile faded. "If your brother ever starts making decisions for this family, don't let him." Those words had stayed with me ever since. Back then, I thought he was just frustrated. Jason had been pushing Dad to sell the family house, claiming it was too much work. Dad always refused. Now, standing outside the locked cemetery gate, those words suddenly carried a completely different meaning. A black sedan slowly turned into the cemetery entrance. Jason noticed it too. His expression changed instantly. The car stopped. A tall man in a charcoal suit stepped out carrying a black leather briefcase. Even from a distance, I recognized him immediately. Michael Carter. Dad's attorney for almost 25 years. Jason muttered under his breath. "You've got to be kidding me." For the first time all morning, he looked scared. Mr. Carter walked toward the gate without saying a word. Rain rolled off his umbrella as he stopped beside me. He looked through the bars at my family, then back at me. "I assume they didn't let you in." I let out a quiet laugh. "That obvious?" "I'm afraid so." He adjusted his glasses and looked at Jason. His voice stayed calm, professional. "Good morning." Jason forced a smile. "This is a private family service." Mr. Carter nodded. It was. Then he calmly lifted his briefcase. Until legal matters became part of it. The smile disappeared from Jason's face. "What legal matters?" Mr. Carter looked directly into his eyes. "The ones your father specifically instructed me to handle. If Claire was ever denied access to his funeral." Jason went completely pale. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. Even the pastor stopped talking and looked toward the gate. Every pair of eyes turned in our direction. Mr. Carter reached into his briefcase. then slowly pulled out a sealed envelope. Across the front, in my father's unmistakable handwriting, were 7 words. Open only if Claire is kept away. Rain pounded against the black umbrella as Mr. Carter held the envelope in front of everyone. The entire cemetery fell silent. Even the pastor stepped away from the casket. Jason forced a nervous laugh. Seriously? Dad left some kind of letter? That's what this is about? Mr. Carter didn't even look at him. He carefully broke the seal. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. Dad's handwriting? I'd recognize it anywhere. Mr. Carter unfolded the letter and began reading. If Michael is reading this, then someone has prevented my daughter Claire from attending my funeral. A ripple moved through the crowd. People started looking at Jason, then at me, then back at Jason. Mr. Carter continued, "If that's true, whoever made that decision ignored my final wishes." Jason interrupted. "Hold on, this proves nothing." Mr. Carter calmly raised one finger. "I'm not finished." Jason clenched his fists. For the first time in years, he had nothing to say. Mr. Carter kept reading. "My daughter belongs at my funeral. No one, not my son, not another relative, not anyone, has the right to keep her away." Aunt Linda slowly covered her mouth. "You told us," she whispered to Jason. "You told us Claire didn't want to come." Jason didn't answer. His silence said enough. Several relatives turned toward him with disbelief. One cousin muttered, "Dude, what the heck?" The whispers spread through the crowd. "You lied? Why would you do that?" "I thought Claire refused to come." Jason looked trapped. Finally, he snapped. "I did what I thought was best." "For who?" I asked quietly. He looked straight at me. "For Dad." I couldn't help it. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was unbelievable. You've been saying that your whole life. Mr. Carter folded the first page. "I'm afraid there's more." Jason's face drained of color. "There are additional instructions." He reached into the envelope again. This time, he pulled out a folded legal document with an official county seal. Jason stared at it. "What is that?" Mr. Carter looked directly at me before answering. "This is the ownership record for your father's burial plot." Nobody spoke. Jason frowned. "So?" Mr. Carter adjusted his glasses. "Your father transferred ownership 6 months ago." Jason shrugged. "Okay, to me." Mr. Carter slowly shook his head. "No." Jason blinked. "Mom?" "No." His voice became even quieter. It wasn't transferred to any member of the family. He turned toward me. "Except Claire." For a moment, the entire cemetery felt frozen. Even the rain seemed quieter. Jason actually laughed. "No." Mr. Carter handed me the document. The county recorded it 6 months ago. My hands trembled as I looked at Dad's signature. It was real. Every page. Every stamp. Every signature. Dad had made me the legal owner of the burial plot. Jason took one step backward. That's impossible. It isn't, Mr. Carter replied. As the legal owner, Claire has the authority to decide who may use this burial site and whether today's burial proceeds. Jason's eyes went wide. You're saying she can stop the funeral? Mr. Carter met his stare. I'm saying the decision is now hers. Nobody moved. Nobody even breathed. All eyes slowly turned toward me. The same people who had ignored me 10 minutes earlier were now waiting for my next words. I looked at my father's casket, then at the family who had locked me out, then back at the document in my hands. I finally spoke. I have one question before anyone touches that casket. Jason swallowed hard. What question? I looked him straight in the eyes. Why did Dad trust me instead of you? Jason's face changed instantly. Not anger, not embarrassment, fear. Real fear. Because he knew if I asked that question out loud, the truth he'd hidden for years was about to come out. Jason's face went ghost white. For the first time in his life, he didn't have an answer. The rain kept falling. Nobody cared anymore. Every eye was on him. I took one slow step toward the gate. You've been telling everyone I abandoned Dad. Jason looked away. You said I never visited. Silence. You told the family I stopped calling. Still nothing. I held up the burial plot deed. So tell them. My voice stayed calm. If any of that was true, why did Dad leave this to me? Nobody spoke. Not even Jason. Finally, Aunt Linda broke the silence.
Jason, answer her. He rubbed the back of his neck. It's complicated. I almost smiled. No, it really isn't. Mr. Carter opened his briefcase again. There is one more document your father asked me to bring. Jason snapped his head toward him. What now? Mr. Carter ignored the question. He pulled out a thin blue folder. This contains your father's written statement, along with copies of his medical visitation records. Jason's confidence disappeared. Completely. Mr. Carter looked around at everyone gathered near the grave. Mr. Harrison asked me to keep these records in case anyone ever questioned who stood by him during his final year. He opened the folder. The hospital required every visitor to sign in. He turned the first page toward the family. There were 84 recorded visits. My cousin quietly whispered, 84? Mr. Carter nodded. Claire signed in 68 times. You lied? He didn't answer. Because he couldn't. Mr. Carter continued. Mr. Harrison also kept a journal. My heart skipped. Dad's journal. I didn't even know he was writing one. Mr. Carter carefully opened it. The entry dated March 14th reads, he cleared his throat. Claire keeps bringing me coffee, even though the doctors say I shouldn't drink it. She says one small cup won't kill me. She's probably right. A few people smiled through their tears. He turned another page. Jason only visits when he wants me to sign something. Every conversation somehow ends with money or the house. Jason suddenly exploded. That's enough! Several relatives stared at me in disbelief. He flipped another page. Jason signed in... He paused. 5. The cemetery went completely silent. Aunt Linda slowly turned toward Jason. You told us you were there every day. Jason swallowed. His voice echoed across the cemetery. None of this matters! It matters to me, I said quietly. It mattered to Dad. Jason pointed at me. You always acted like his favorite. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Favorite? I laughed. Dad loved both of us. You just stopped acting like a son. His face twisted with anger. You have no idea what I sacrificed. No, I replied. I have every idea. You quit your job because you said you wanted to help Dad. I looked around at the family. Did Jason ever tell any of you that Dad was paying all of his bills? Confused faces turned toward Jason. He wasn't. I nodded. He was. Mr. Carter quietly reached into the folder one last time. I can confirm that. Jason closed his eyes, almost like he already knew what was coming. Your father paid Mr. Jason Harrison's mortgage for 11 months, along with his truck payments and over $20,000 in personal credit card debt. Gasps spread through the crowd. My cousin stared at Jason. Dude, is that true? Jason said nothing. Because it was. I looked at my brother. I never wanted Dad's money. I wanted my father. My voice cracked for the first time. And you spent his last year treating him like an ATM. Jason lowered his head. The confidence, the arrogance, the excuses, they were all gone. Mr. Carter slowly closed the folder. I believe there was only one document left. I frowned. What document? He looked directly at me. The one your father specifically instructed me to read only after the truth came out. My heart started racing. A letter? Mr. Carter nodded. He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket, pulled out a small white envelope. Across the front, written in my father's familiar handwriting, were 6 simple words. For Claire and Jason. Together. Mr. Carter looked down at the final envelope. For the first time that morning, even he seemed nervous. He broke the seal carefully. This letter, he said quietly, was never meant to be read. Unless my children were standing together. Jason gave a bitter laugh. That's not going to happen. It already has, Mr. Carter replied. Neither of us had noticed it, but somehow we were standing only a few feet apart, separated by years of resentment, not by distance. Mr. Carter unfolded the letter. His voice echoed through the cemetery. If you're hearing this, then my funeral didn't go the way I hoped. The crowd lowered their heads. Jason, Claire, before either of you blames the other, let me tell you something I should have said years ago. Jason slowly looked up. I failed both of you. The entire cemetery went silent. Even I wasn't expecting that. Mr. Carter continued. I spent so much time keeping peace that I ignored the lies growing inside this family. Every time Jason disappointed me, I covered for him. Jason's breathing became heavier. Every time Claire got hurt, I told her to be the bigger person. A tear rolled down my cheek. Dad knew.
He'd known all along. Being the bigger person comes with a price. Eventually, good people get tired of carrying everyone else's mistakes. Nobody moved. Nobody even looked away. Then came the sentence that changed everything. Mr. Carter paused before reading it, almost like he wanted everyone to prepare. Jason, you think I gave Claire the burial plot because I trusted her more. Another pause. You're wrong. Jason frowned. Mr. Carter looked directly at him. I gave it to her because I knew she'd never use it against you. Jason's knees almost gave out. He grabbed the back of a nearby chair to keep from falling. Mr. Carter folded the first page. I believe there's one final instruction. He reached inside the envelope again. This time, he removed a small velvet pouch. Inside was an old brass key. Jason frowned. What is that? Mr. Carter held it up. Your father's safety deposit box key. The crowd exchanged confused looks. Mr. Carter continued. Dennis left one final condition. He looked directly at both of us. This box may only be opened if Jason apologizes because he truly means it, not because he got caught. Jason's eyes filled with tears. And if I don't? Mr. Carter answered without emotion. Then it remains locked forever. Jason whispered, What's inside? Mr. Carter shook his head. I honestly don't know. Dennis never told me. He only said. Mr. Carter looked at the envelope one last time. The contents will tell my children everything I never found the courage to say while I was alive. I stared at the small brass key. For the first time all day, the burial plot wasn't the biggest mystery anymore. The safety deposit box was. Jason slowly looked at me, his voice barely audible. Claire. I'm sorry.
I searched his face. For years, I'd watched him fake tears, fake promises, fake regret. But this was different. His shoulders weren't tense anymore. His pride was gone. He looked like a little boy who finally realized he'd lost the one person who always believed he'd do better. Before I could answer, Mr. Carter quietly said, "I think your father just gave you both." One final choice. No one moved. The little brass key rested in Mr. Carter's palm. It suddenly felt heavier than the burial plot deed. Jason stared at it. "Dad never told you what was in the box?" Mr. Carter shook his head. "He told me it wasn't valuable. Unless the two of you found your way back to each other." Jason let out a broken laugh. "That sounds like Dad." For the first time all day, it actually did. The funeral finally continued. This time, I wasn't standing outside the gate. I stood beside my father's casket, exactly where he always wanted me. Jason quietly took his place on the other side. Neither of us spoke. We didn't have to. As the casket was lowered into the ground, I whispered, "I love you, Dad." Jason whispered the same words a second later. 3 days later, Mr. Carter called us both. "The bank is expecting you." Jason picked me up that morning. The drive was awkward. 20 minutes passed before he finally spoke. "I almost didn't come." "I know. I figured you'd hate me forever." I looked out the window. I was angry. I paused. But hate takes too much energy. He nodded. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." "No, you don't." His eyes dropped. But Dad deserved better than 2 children who never spoke again. Neither of us said another word. The bank manager led us into a private room. He placed a small steel box on the table. "This hasn't been opened in 11 years. Mr. Carter handed me the brass key. "Go ahead." My hands shook as I turned it. Click. The lid slowly opened. Jason leaned forward. "So, what's inside?" There were no stacks of cash, no hidden will, no jewelry. Just 3 things: an old baseball, a faded photograph, and a sealed envelope. Jason frowned. "That's it?" Mr. Carter smiled. I had a feeling. I picked up the baseball first. Dad's handwriting covered the leather. The day Jason hit his first home run. Jason stared at it, then quietly smiled through his tears. I thought he threw this away. I picked up the photograph. It was us. Dad standing between his 2 kids, covered in mud after a camping trip. We were laughing so hard neither of us could stand up straight. I hadn't seen that picture in years. Then, I opened the final envelope. Inside was one handwritten page. Dad's handwriting instantly filled the room. "If you're reading this together, then my real inheritance worked. Jason looked confused. What inheritance? I kept reading. Money disappears. Houses eventually belong to someone else. Even cemeteries fill up. But if this box brought my children back into the same room, then I left behind something worth far more than any estate. By the time I reached the last paragraph, I could barely see the words. My eyes were full of tears. Claire, thank you for never giving up on this family. Jason, it's never too late to become the man I always believed you could be. Silence filled the room. Then I read the final sentence out loud. Don't spend the rest of your lives visiting my grave. Spend it visiting each other. Jason broke. Completely. He buried his face in his hands. I'm sorry. He wasn't talking to me anymore. He was talking to a father who could no longer answer. I reached across the table and put my hand on his shoulder. We can't change yesterday. He looked at me. But we still get tomorrow. For the first time in years, my brother smiled. A small one. A real one. As we walked out of the bank together, the afternoon sun broke through the clouds. Jason looked at me and asked, So, coffee? I laughed. Dad would have liked that. He would have complained that we were wasting money. We both laughed. For the first time, it didn't hurt. Sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't land, money, or a family name. Sometimes it's one final chance to become the family you should have been all along.